Hello, welcome to a deck profile of this Abomination Against God. This is Danger Dark World branded. This deck came to be because as I was playing Danger Dark World, I'm like, dang, this deck doesn't have a normal summon. And that kind of led me down this whole rabbit hole. And now we're at 60 card Danger Dark World branded. I want to say that I'm kind of new to Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. My deck building skills are not superb. So I'm certain that like there are some ratios that could be better, or like, oh, you should run Oliver at 2 to run Bigfoot at 3, blah 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 blah. Like I'm sure there are some flaws, and I'm sure this deck, and I'm certain this deck does not have to be 60 cards. Like if you don't want to run a 60 card deck, you can probably get this deck down to like 50 or something. Like you're not gonna get it at 40 just because there's too many pieces of this puzzle that you need. But this deck does not need to be 60 cards. I just prefer it at 60 cards. Um, Basically the deck wants to use specifically Sargus and Merrymaker and Sargus to get to a Saryuja for free without using all the free 4s and 8s we can get from Dark World to get to Saryuja without blowing our load on dangers in Dark Worlds. And also there are some other very fun interactions between Branded and Danger Dark World. But on to the cards themselves. We have 2 copies of Danger Bigfoot. Uh, I don't run 3 Bigfoot just because like drawing the 3rd Bigfoot feels kind of bad, and so I don't love running 3 Bigfoot even in pure Danger Dark World. But if you want to run 3, you could cut Thunderbird, which we have at 1, and run a 3rd Bigfoot. Thunderbird I feel similarly about. I just like if you're going first especially drawing a 2nd or 3rd Thunderbird feels awful. We have 1 Nessie. This is because Nessie is a level 7, though normally obviously Nessie would be a 3. Because we're not doing as much danger stuff, the effect when she hits herself isn't as good, and the 7 is just a link material. We can't use it to Xyz at all, which feels kind of bad. 3 Mothman, because it's a 4, which we want for Merrymaker, and also because Mothman is crazy in this deck. Like, we get the discard, we get a free draw. This card is like, you have to run this at 3. Chupacabra at 2, mostly because it's a fiend. An older version of this deck ran Ogopogo and Danger Response Team as well, and if you do run Ogopogo, and you have Danger Response Team in hand, you can bin Chupacabra instead to get a Fiend Engrave for Gates. And we have 1 copy each of Tsuchinoko and Jackalope. I'm thinking I may cut Tsuchinoko just because, like, getting a free 3 isn't super useful, but Jackalope absolutely is, like, disgusting for this deck. It's a free 4, which we want very badly, and it's just, like, Jackalope's just a great card. Please let him out, Konami. Now onto the fun stuff. We have a copy of Dramaturge of Despia. Obviously we can make Grapha with him. We can make all of our fusions with this card. If we've already played a Luber and we discard Tragedy, we can get a Dramaturge, and then we can discard him from hand to get Grapha, and then get him back to then Xyz him off. And if you use Dramaturge as an Xyz material, then he isn't banished when you detach him, or when the Xyz monster goes to the graveyard. He just goes to grave. 3 Aluber, because Aluber is a good card. This is our main normal summon. Like, we really want to normal summon Aluber over anything else. We have other normal summons, but this is the best one by a lot, so we run 3 of them. A copy of Tragedy. If we discard Tragedy either on purpose or by accident, we can grab either Aluber or Dramaturge. And also, if we don't want or need to do that, then we can just get a free Brandon spell and set it with the discard with the banish effect. 2 copies of Albion, the Shrouded Dragon. This card generally is going to be sending. Whoops. Sorry about that. Albion, the Shrouded Dragon. There we go. Sorry about that. This card is either going to be sending Screams or Albaz if we have Cartesia. We don't want to send Brandon High Spirits. We don't want to send Despia. If he's in Grave especially, we want to send Screams, because then we can set it for free, and Screams is really good in this deck. Speaking of the Devil, we have Cartesia. Having free fusions in this deck is nice, especially because our only fusion spell is a hard once per turn. And so having Cartesia, like whether or not we make Rengoigna with her, this card is just really good for this deck. And so we run her. You could make an argument to run more than one. It's just, I don't know. This deck already has consistency problems, so running a card that's a brick if you draw more than one just feels bad. Albaz because we're playing branded. Duh. I'm going to explain all these Springens monsters together. So you have two copies of Springens Kit, Springens Rocky, Tally-Ho Springens, and then we have Merrymaker and Sargas. This is just a really compact Springens package. The only reason that this is Rocky is because I have played this deck for like probably 30, 40 hours between Master Duel and Omega, and I just ordered it for paper. This is just the least useless Springens monster for this deck. But if you find that, oh, well, Branko is better in this edge case, sure, I accept that Rocky may not be optimal, but in my experience, Rocky occasionally happens, and none of the others, like, ever happen, even remotely. Because Brothers isn't helpful, because we're already doing what Brothers does with Tally-Ho. We don't have more than 4 Springens monsters in the deck. The reason Rocky is useful is that if we start our turn with an extra Springens monster, we can get it back to hand with Rocky. Specifically, if we start our turn with a kit, we can get that extra kit back to hand with Rocky, and then with Kit's effect to grab the Branded spell, we put the kit we don't need back. We run a copy of Therian King Regulus. We can search it off of Sargas if we have everything we need for Tally-Ho, and we just need the 8. This is an 8, which this deck wants to make ZV. Regulus is also just nice because it's a negate, and also this is just a cool card, so I like it and I run it. We have a copy of Diabolica, the Draconique General. This card is insanely good. It can help us recycle a Snau if we discard it, but if something else gets discarded, it's another free 8 that gets banished. The same thing that applies to Dramaturge applies to this, where if it's used for an Xyz material and you detach it, it doesn't get banished, it goes to grave. But it's mostly a free 8, but the secondary effect can be useful too. Just do keep in mind that this is a hard once per turn each for these two effects. We have Grapha and Rainbow. Grapha, obviously you need 3 of both of these. These cards would make the deck tick. Rainbow is especially gross for this deck because we get him in hand so much, and if our opponent discards it either through blind luck or our shenaniganry, just getting free Snows to then bounce and getting free shit to bounce is nice. Grapha's secondary effect doesn't happen a lot, but when it does happen, it's cool. Lucen's secondary effect is really, really good because it allows us to get more Snows, which we want for our Dark World spells, because we have no other way to search them. So we run 2 Lucent. You should run Silva, to be clear. I just think hand looping is boring, so I don't run Silva, but this deck would be better if these 2 cards were Silva. Just on another. Snau, this is our searcher. This card is mandatory 3. This card is bananas. Snau is if it gets sent, it pulls. The important thing is that if it gets sent, it can pull your spells, which Dark World does not have another way of getting its spells besides Snau. So getting Snau into your hand is top priority for this deck. And if Snau eats an Ash Blossom, it sucks, but odds are if Snau's engraved, then you're in a pretty alright spot. Then we have 2 Beige. Beige is generally at 3 in Dark World decks, but because we're already at 60 cards, if this deck could be 61 cards, it would have 3 copies of Beige. We have 2 Genta, 2 Gates. 3 Genta, 3 Gates, you can do that, but there's not room in this deck to run 3 Genta, 3 Gates, and also you only really need 2, so I only run 2. But this card is a 1-card starter. If you open Genta, then you get Sargas for free, as long as you have another 4, which, look at all the 4s we have in our deck. You will almost certainly have at least one other 4, and that is Saryuja. We only run 1 copy of Ceruli. That is because so many of our cards in this deck aren't Dark World cards that don't benefit from Cerule's effect. So we want 1, because if we can hit him, then it can get us some advantage, but we don't want 2 because it's just too greedy. We have a copy of Salamander Catalyzer. This card is fairly new. It says if you can reveal this card and another Fiend monster in your hand, special summon one and discard the other. Generally, you're going to be pitching the other one and summoning a Salamander. The only thing that sucks about this card is that it's not a dark monster, but it is a free 4, which is really important. We have a copy each of Illusion and Souls and Illusion. These cards just fuck in this deck, honestly. Like, if you don't want to run these, like, you don't have these cards, are too expensive, whatever, I understand. You could definitely run, in place of these cards, you could run a third Beige and another high-level special summoner for like a third Lucent or a Gold or a Laxia or whatever the hell, if you don't have these cards or don't want to use them. But they just make the deck so disgusting and inconsistent. Like, because you can kind of brick sometimes, where like, oh, my Tally-Ho is offline because I've drawn all my Spriggan stuff. Or, oh, I've already used my Gates and I can't get it back. Then you can just throw it away with Souls, and that's just really nice. 2 copies of Gates, 1 copy of Dark Corridor. This card just sucks to draw more than one of, so I only run 1. 2 copies of Accession because you have to. If something happens to the first Accession, then your life is just over. So I run 2. Copy of Dark World Puppetry. This is for Snake Eye. If you can like banish Princess and Poplar and Ash, then the Snake Eyes player is very sad. So this card is in the deck for exactly that reason. If you wanted to put this card in the sideboard and run like any other card, like a third copy of Beige, and you wanted to sideboard this card in for Snake Eye, I understand, but because Snake Eye is so prevalent right now, it's silly not to main deck it. It also does some helpful things in our other matchups. Dark World Archives, this card is crazy. So this card has 2 effects, and it's a lot of text, but this does 2 things. You can, during your main phase, you can discard a Dark World monster, and if you do, Dark World monsters you currently control gain attack equal to the level of discarded monster. That shit does not matter. What matters is that it discards for effect, which triggers all our shit. But you have to have a Dark World monster on field for this effect to work. So sometimes you just open Archives and no other Dark World way to discard, so you just have to normal summon like Bedge or Genta or Snow, and then you have to do this, which triggers its secondary effect that if a Fiend monster's original type is Fiend is discarded from your hand by the effect of a Dark World card or an opponent's card effect, even during the damage step, you can discard a card, then draw 2, which is obviously nuts. And this discard can be any card. It does not have to be a Fiend monster. And obviously that effect is quite good, because especially if you hit like a Dark World, even if you don't hit a Dark World monster with it, just drawing 2. Who would have thought drawing 2 Pot of Greed is a good card? Who would have thought? Tally-Ho Spriggans, I already explained that. Despia Theater with Branded. This card is here because if like we want 3 branded cards in case, just for Aluber, Kit, and Albion to each have 1 target. Despia is the 3rd target. If there's another branded card that you think would work better, I'm all ears. This is mostly just like a backup in case something happens to our Accession or we can't get our hands on Accession. If we have a Grapha in hand, we can still make our big Grapha. And if we want to fuse something else, we can, but generally we're using this to either make Big Grapha or Starving Venom. Branded in High Spirits. This card is the reason that this whole abomination exists. This card is a lesser known branded card. It reveals a monster in your hand and send a level 8 fusion monster from the extra deck with the same type of the revealed monster that has 2,500 attack or defense. Then you can discard the revealed monster for effect, and if you do, add a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mentions it from deck to hand. And then and then on a different turn where a fusion monster is sent to the graveyard, you can get it back, but that shit does not happen. This card, we generally what we want to do is we want to send a Masquerade, which is a Fiend monster, so obviously our Dark Worlds are Fiends. Chupacabra is also a Fiend. But if we do, there's, you could run, there are several fairies that meet the branded stat line requirement, Shadow Construct, the shitty Dante fusion, Dante Pilgrim of the Burning Abyss, are both, branded fairies. They both have 2,500 defense. So if you wanted to put one of those in this deck to make Branded High Spirits work off of these Despia monsters, you could. I just found that it's not that useful, so I don't do it. But this card, oh my god, this card just makes the deck tick. This card is incredible. if I could run more, like if there was any card I would say like you should run more than one copy of, I would say it's this one. But because we're at 60 cards and we do kind of want all these cards, I only run it at one. Screams the Branded has a lot of funny interactions with this deck. Um, the big funny interaction is that if they kill your Grapha, which for reasons we'll explore is going to be difficult, if they kill your Grapha and you send to the graveyard, you just get him back, and he doesn't float again because he has to be fusion summoned for that, but he is still a big fuck off guy, and more importantly, if he's sent to the graveyard before he can get his negate or his funny effect off, negate quote unquote off, you can bring him back and he'll still have that negate. He does not need to be fusion summoned to have the negate. He just needs to be fusion summoned to float. We have Dark World Brainwashing, which this should be over here, but we have Dark World Brainwashing. Well, it's a trap, but who fucking cares? We have Dark World Brainwashing. This card is kind of a win more card. So like if you have an extra Snow and you've already fused and you've already done like you've already fused, you already have archives up. You can pitch your last Snow to grab Brainwashing, and you flip it up on your opponent's turn. If you want to make sure you do have some Dark World monsters, if you do plan on like going for Brainwashing, you got to make sure you end your turn with three cards in your hand, and some Dark Worlds on the field to bounce. You can bounce the big Grapha. Obviously, it feels bad to do it, but also do keep in mind if you end the turn with a Cerulea on their field, it does not say Dark World monsters you control. It just says bounce a Dark World monster. This card is also really funny in the mirror because it just kind of is like this endless loop of shit. But honestly, this deck kind of owns in the Dark World mirror because this deck isn't just doing Dark World things. And then last but not least, I just added these cards right before I recorded this so they're not sorted properly, and also they're very optional. If you want, you do not have to run any of this, but if you want to run any of this, run all of it. Dark World has this problem where sometimes you draw gates and you draw 4 Dark World monsters, none of which can get themselves into the graveyard. The BA Fiends solve that problem. These are just the best 2 BA monsters for this deck, because this one just gets this one if it dies, or this one just summons this one if it's sent to graveyard, and this one gets you a Brow. Brow is nice. I think Brow is good. I know many Dark World decks do not run this card, but I just think Pot of Greed is a good card, and because this deck is so focused on like doing exactly this, and like I just think the card's good. It also helps to keep cards in hand for Brainwashing. But these cards solve the whole oh shit I don't have any fiends in my grave to banish problem. And yeah, that is the main deck. Onto the extra deck. We have 1 Grapha Dragon Overlord of Dark World. I call him a Big Grapha because just to distinguish from normal Grapha, we have Big Grapha. Big Grapha is a crazy, crazy monster. There are some decks that just cannot hit over it. This deck just beats Blue Eyes because you negate or you do this effect, which is when your opponent activates a monster or a normal spell trap, you can activate this effect. The activated effect becomes your opponent discards a card, and that is a card of your choice, which, because odds are you're ending your turn with Rainbow in hand, means that you can, if you didn't summon Cerulea on your turn, you can pitch Rainbow and get a Cerulea, and then discard from your own hand again, and just keep on kind of going, and then it floats into the normal Grapha if it leaves the field, and it can float into a Grapha even if you banished him with Accession because he was in your graveyard. And that effect is so useful. We have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This card is just nice. Sometimes you just need a really big guy, and that is what this card does. Obviously, we can make this with 90% of the monsters in the deck, right? We have 1, 2, 3 monsters that are not dark. So any other monsters, and I guess Illusion you can't because there's no way this deck can't summon this card. So I guess of the 48 monsters this deck runs, 3 of them cannot make Starving Venom. And so this card is just a big guy. This card is basically just access code, but it's easier for this deck to make because it's just this deck, because of Despia and because of Cartesia, this deck really likes to fuse. So sometimes Starving Venom can just win the game. And Starving Venom, if you have Big Grapha and you make Starving Venom, you can target Starving Venom, and that's 8k. Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. This is just the card that we are sending for Branded and High Spirits. This is just the Fiend with 2500 attack that we want to send. And if we, and it's, if this effect does trigger, it's a free guy, even though obviously if you get him out of grave, he doesn't get the burn. The burn I have found is just not helpful. We do have Caritas because this card is good for this deck. Now, something that this card serves several functions. Function number one is that if you go to turn 3 and on turn 2, for one reason or another, Branded High Spirits is back in your hand, you can send Caritas. Like, this is not just a dead card. I ran into that problem a lot where, like, the game would go to turn 3 and I have Branded High Spirits, but I can't do anything with it. So Caritas here for that reason. But more importantly, it just, like, making the attack 0 is good. And also it floats into a Luber. But odds are if you made this monster on turn 1, you're probably far enough ahead you've won the game. Something to note, it is also an 8, which can be useful. All these monsters do also just function as turning monsters that aren't a good level into level 8, including Grand Guignol, the Dusk Dragon. This card can send Grapha or Rainbow to the graveyard, which is nuts. Banishing this card for Caritas can be useful. It's it's fine. Like getting this card and going to Caritas is adequately useful. There was a version of this deck that ran Quem once upon a time, but I found that she was just not helpful because this deck isn't doing enough branded things for Quem to be super good. Even getting her for free off Grand Guignol, just wasn't good enough. So Quem did not make the final cut. We have Zombie Vampire, because Zombie Vampire, the mill is really, oh god, the mill is so nice. But more importantly, odds are it gets us a Dark World monster. It mills a Dark World monster that we can special summon, and then we can keep on bouncing, keep on doing our horse shit. If it mills Accession, that's obviously quite good because Accession has this graveyard effect. Sargus and Merrymaker. This deck has a very, very consistent line with these two cards that I will show off. Dugar is the Timeless because this card is cracked, period, but for Dark World especially, this card is BANANAS. We have the White Woman, Underworld, Goddess of the Closed World. This card is mostly just a flex. And also we can make it using Cerulea on our opponent's field. But this card can be good. Obviously going second, it's pretty good, especially because we just get a lot of things on field, so we can get material for this pretty easily. We have Saryuja. We're usually going to be making Saryuja off of our Spring's line. Usually the end of the Spring's line is Tally-Ho, or is Saryuja. And Saryuja is obviously crazy in this deck because because there are certain cards we want to draw and certain cards we don't want to draw. Saryuja letting us put those cards back, in addition to obviously just drawing a card, is really good. Apo, it's Apo, especially with you could make this is probably the I would call this the 14th or 15th card in this extra deck, but Apo's really good. So runner, Beat Cop from the Underworld. Now I do know that a lot of Dark World decks run this card, but I don't always hear about why. The reason we really like Beat Cop is because of this tribute effect. If this card is linked somebody using 2 dark monsters with different names, I think this is just a me thing. But there are so many times, especially on Master Duel, where I'm not paying as much attention. There are so many times that I link summon this card and it doesn't light up yellow, and I'm like, oh fuck, I forgot. Do not forget this, because you have several monsters in your deck that are not dark monsters. Not every monster in your deck is dark, so be careful with Beat Cop. Grand Guignol is a light. Sargus and Merrymaker are both fire. Dugar is fire. Goddess is light. And then Rocky is fire. Regulus is earth. And then Salamander is also fire. So just be careful not to use those to make Beat Cop. Generally, if we are going for a goddess line, and what we want to do is, if we are able, is we want to make Beat Cop first, and then do the Beat Cop tribute if we can get a guy back to have 4 for goddess. But if not, you can just make Beat Cop to just like get room on your board and like just like linking off, just like straight up linking off. Even if you don't like use the effect, just having a generic link to is good. I just think that because it's a fiend, because it like has a tribute effect, and this tribute effect can get Grapha or Rainbow back engraved to keep on bouncing. This is just the best generic link to this deck can run. Muckraker from the Underworld is also in our extra deck. This is a YOLO card. This is a card that basically says, I have 2 monsters on the board and nothing I can do with them, so I'm going to link them off into Muckraker from the Underworld, and pray to God. This is a YOLO card. This is a desperation card. This is not a like if you're making this card, your turn is basically over. Obviously, it can't be link summoned. It does discard for effect, which is nice, but it also fiend locks you. And this destruction prevention effect. So many people just don't know this card does this. I've played against so many people that just do not realize that this tribute effect I could just do, and it's crazy. I'll say that this tribute effect has definitely won me some games. Just like people not realizing that I can just tribute this card or tribute a random shitter to prevent their destruction. Nightmare Unicorn, this is the 15th card in this extra deck. If you have a card, like if you think, as an example, like, what the hell? Like if you want to run Hope Harb over this, or if you want to run like, I don't fucking know. Number 1 Infection Buzz King is really funny in this deck, but I don't know. He's just not good. I mean he's good. He helps against like certain matchups, but he's not like super consistent. Like I would side deck him if anything. But I just have found that Nightmare Unicorn kind of serves a unique function in this deck that no other card really does. Like just spinning a card is good. And yeah, that is the deck. I don't have a side deck because I have no idea what the hell this deck would board in, because I'm kind of new to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm kind of bad. So if you like know what this deck should sideboard, I will say something I would love to sideboard is this dog shit and Old Rainbow. Just because these cards are funny. They're not good, but they are funny. This next part is just me explaining what all these cards do, so if you already know what all these cards do, feel free to skip ahead. So it occurred to me that I forgot to explain what the hell most of these cards actually do. I explained a few, but I didn't explain most of them. We're going to start with these danger monsters. They all have the same text at the top. You can reveal it in your hand, discard a random card, and if that card is different than the monster you've revealed, then you can special summon the monster you revealed. If you have 2 of the same danger monster, like if you have 2 Mothman in your hand, it does not matter which Mothman is revealed. If one of them is revealed, then you don't get the special summon. But if a monster does pitch itself, you do get its discard effect. Each of these monsters has a different one. Bigfoot destroys, Thunderbird destroys a set card, Nessie searches for any danger except herself, Mothman draws and discards for both players, Chupacabra pulls a danger from grave that is not Chupacabra, Tsuchinoko specials itself if it gets pitched, Jackalope specials anything from the deck. The important ones here are Jackalope and Mothman. Chupacabra happens on occasion, but it's not like consistent. Bigfoot is nice going second, obviously, and if they have like some kind of gay shit like that they do on your turn, then you can kill it with Bigfoot and or Thunderbird, but it's rare that happens. If you do pitch Nessie, your priority is Jackalope, or if you have a Jackalope already, then get Mothman. If you have both Jackalope and Mothman, then Nessie can pull Chupacabra or Bigfoot depending on probably you want Chupacabra, but you can also get Bigfoot if you need to kill shit. Dramaturge of Despia has 2 effects. The first effect that is if your opponent, if either player, Fusion, Synchro, Exceeds, or Link summons, you can target an effect monster on the field and negate it. But that effect is rarely useful. The much more useful effect is that if you fuse it off and it goes to deck or goes to graveyard or is banished, it comes back once per turn. But it's banished when it leaves the field. That doesn't really matter because usually we want to Exceed with Dramaturge, and like I said, if you detach it, it goes to grave. But this is just so nice, even if you do have to link it off, like it's just so nice to have another free body. Aluber pulls a branded spell. If you normal or special it just gets you a free branded spell. And if a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while Aluber is in grave, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, special summon Aluber, and if you do, negate the target until the end of the turn. But Aluber is a hard once per turn total, so like if you summon it, you're not going to get to pull a branded spell. Tragedy also has two effects, but I believe I elucidated them earlier. Albion, if he's in your hand or your grave, you can send a branded spell or Albaz from deck to grave, or you can send a branded spell or Albaz to your grave, and he either special summons if you send it from the hand, or he goes back to deck if you send it from the deck. And something to note is that he is Albaz while on the field or in the grave, which means that that will matter later. Just know for now that if he's in grave, send Scream. If he's not in grave, send Albaz. And if he's in your hand and you do this effect, he goes back to your deck and he draws you a card. But if he's in grave, he doesn't draw you that card. Cartesia, if Albaz is in your grave, she's free, and she can fuse a level 8 or higher fusion monster, like just using a field or hand. And then if a fusion monster was sent, she comes back to your hand. This is really nice for brainwashing. Because she's just an extra card, even though we don't want to dump her, obviously, just having the 3 hearts to meet the activation requirement, Cartesia helps a lot with that. Because obviously if we activate Branded and High Spirits, that's Cartesia. She's a tuner, obviously we don't have any synchros, so that doesn't matter. Albaz, we don't care, this card is just called Fallen of Albaz, and so we run it, but it discards a card and fuses. Like, if you want, you could sideboard Mirror Jade, and this is like an okay normal summon going second, but we don't care about this card all the now. Rocky bounces a spring in from grave. If, like I said, if we have that extra kit in grave, we can bounce it. We can bounce the second kit and send it back with the first kit's effect. Kit gets a branded spell and puts a card back into Jesus Christ. Spring's kit grabs a branded spell from deck and then puts a card back into the deck. If it's normally special summoned, and it's free if there's a fusion monster that mentions Albaz, but we rarely ever, that's like not going to be the case because we don't have any fusion monsters that mention Albaz in grave, so we're going to, if we don't get her off Tally Ho, Kit is another normal summon we can do. Regulus pulls a machine from grave and equips it to itself to special summon from the hand, and by the way, machine, and once he's on the field, he can kill himself because we don't run any other Therian monsters, so he's always just going to be killing himself for that Omni Negate, and he's also free 8. Diabolica, I explained. Grapha, if you discard Grapha, he pops a guy. If your opponent discards Grapha, he does yada yada. He reveals a card in your opponent's hand. If it's a monster, you can take the monster, but it's cool when it happens, but it's not great. More importantly is this bounce effect, that if there's a Dark World monster on the field, the Grapha can bounce it. And so he returns the monster to the hand to special summon himself. Rainbow, if you discard it, you add a level 5 or higher Dark World monster from your deck to your hand. If your opponent discards it, you get a free Dark World on the field that's level 4 or lower. And Rainbow also has that bounce effect for level 7 or lower Dark World monsters, which is every Dark World monster except for Grapha. And then obviously the big Grapha. So this allows you to bounce a monster with Rainbow and then bounce Rainbow with Grapha. This card is crazy good. Loosened, if you discard it, it special summons. And then if it was discarded by your opponent, you get an extra special summon from your deck to either field. So this can pull Ceruli if you wanted to, or this could just pull Snow to bounce it, or this can pull Rainbow or Grapha if you just need one of them. Snow searches, and can also reborn from your opponent's graveyard if the opponent hits it. Badge just special summons if he's pitched. Genta can discard himself to grab Gates if he's banished, like by Gates. He is special summoned, but he can only be special summoned once per turn, period. It's not, this card can be special summoned once per turn by this effect. This card can be special summoned once per turn total. So do keep that in mind. Do not special summon Genta with anything else except his own effect, because you will forget. Ceruli, if you pitch him, he comes back on your opponent's field, and when he comes back on your opponent's field by the effect of a Dark World card, your opponent, and if he basically gives you the bonus, he discards a card and gives you the bonus effect for it. Salamander Catalyzer, I described. Souls, if you don't know what Magician Souls Illusion does, Illusion pulls souls, puts itself back. Soul bins Illusion from the deck, and then special summons itself because we're not playing Dark Magician. So And then the important thing is that we can send 2 spells from field or hand to draw 2 cards. Gates of Dark World, Fiend monsters gain 300 attack. This makes a Big Grapha a 3,500 attack monster. Again, there are some decks that just can't hit over that. But the important effect is that you can banish a Fiend, discard a Fiend, and draw a card. The Fiend we want to banish is Genta, at least the first time, but if we can't banish Genta, then it's fine. Dark Quarter pulls a Dark World and then pulls a Dark World monster, then discards a card. We want to pull Snao more often than not, but it kind of depends on what you've already got in your hand. But it is hard once per turn. Accession fuses a Fiend monster from extra deck. And if we're fusing a Dark World Fiend monster, which we almost always are, then we can discard from hand. And that is discard, not just send, that is discard. So we do activate our effects from this. And then if it's in the grave, we can pull it back and discard discard a Dark World monster. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was Dark World monster or Fiend, but it is specifically Dark World monster. And we can pull this back to hand and discard a Dark World monster, obviously activating that effect too. Puppetry banishes up to 3 cards in either graveyard, then discards a Fiend monster, and then you can, after the turn this was sent to graveyard, you can banish Puppetry from the graveyard, then get a banished Fiend back to hand, which I've never activated this effect, so, I think this card was printed before Genta existed, but I could be wrong about that either way. Archives, I explained. Tally Ho, I realized I forgot to explain what this card does. So, when you activate Tally Ho, you can also detach up to 3 materials, which if we go into our 4 line through Merrymaker and Sargus, Sargus will always have 3 materials. So we detach 3 materials from our Sargus, and then we add a Springens monster to hand, and then we can special summon 3 Springens monsters. Those 3 Springens monsters are going to be Merrymaker, Rocky, and Kit. Do not summon 2 Kit. And then you can bounce it by detaching a material, but you can't do both on the same turn. And it's hard once per turn. Despia fuses level 8 or higher fusion monster, which is all our fusion monsters. And then this shit does not matter. Okay, it can matter, but usually our turn ends with Gates on field, not this card. This card could just be Polymerization, but it has the word branded on it, and it's the best. We could run like Branded White, but that requires all the other cards that have the word branded on them that fuse have some caveat that is bad for this deck. So we just run the field spell. Branded High Spirits I explained in pretty great detail. I realized I completely skipped Screams of the Branded in my profile, so sorry about that. Screams of the Branded is a trap card that if a fusion monster is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a fusion monster that is banished from the graveyard, and if it's sent to activate Fallen of Albaz's effect, aka Albion from Grave, which counts, that's like the point, that's like the intent of this interaction, you can set it for free at the end of the turn, and you can only do that once per turn. Brainwashing I explained, and these cards, Brow just draws, and you discard them. And that is our main deck. Grapha I explained, Starving Venom targets a monster and gets attack. He can also take an effect of an opponent's monster. Masquerade burns and specials itself from the grave. If they have a funny monster, if they have a not just like normal effect monster, like they have a fusion, they have a synchro, they have an Xyz, they have a whatever, you can get a Masquerade, but it's just a beater. It's basically just Dark Magician. And then you banish it when it leaves the field. Caritis can change the attack of... I kind of already explained this. I already explained Grand Guignol. Zombie Vampire mills 4, and then special summons one of the monsters milled from either player's deck. Merrymaker can bin a Springens monster. If you have no Springens in hand, and you just made Merrymaker with 2 other 4s, then do this. Do it basically no matter what. You just need to make sure you always have 1 Springens in the deck to pull with Tally Ho, because if you can't pull Springens with Tally Ho, you can't activate this card. So, just be careful, and then you can Xyz that into Sargus. Sargus can pull a Springens card, which is always going to be Tally Ho, unless you have your Tally Ho in hand, in which case you don't. In which case you grab Regulus. And its other effect is that if a material is detached from an Xyz monster, you can target a card on the field, either destroy it or bounce it. This has a very fun interaction with Gates specifically, where if Genta was part of your Merrymaker line, or you just have Gates and you've already activated Gates, since Gates is a soft once per turn, you can bounce the Gates with Sargus to get a 3rd activation of it. And it's people do not expect that shit, and they're like, whoa, and I'm like, yeah, that's like the one that this energy is totally accidental. This like I just discovered this deck did this after I made the deck. Dugaris, you is 2/4s. You detach the fours, and you can skip your next draw to draw two, discard one. Skip your next main one to get a reborn from grave. Skip the next battle phase. Skip the battle phase of your next turn, and also double your attack. You really just want to be drawn here. You do not need the reborn, and you don't care about the attack. Goddess, you can link it off. You can use a monster your opponent controls as link material. You do need Sling 5, and you need at least 4. It negates all face-up stuff, and once per turn, if something is coming out of the graveyard, you can negate that effect. Saryuja, we're always making this with 4 materials, so I'm just going to go through what all they do. Monster is normally a special summon to a zone this card points to. That monster gains 300 attack and defense. This effect can chain block. So if you summon as example, if you like summon if you like discard, if you summon a danger monster and you discarded like Loosened, you can activate Saryuja's attack gain on Chain Link 1 and Loosened on Chain, or no, you do Loosened on Chain Link 1, Saryuja on Chain Link 2, and now you've chain blocked your Loosened special summon, which is just funny. But the once per turn you can special summon from your hand. This special summon can just be a Looper. If you just want to hang on to your normal summon and you didn't already normal summon a Looper, that this special summon can be a Looper. Also, if you just like need a guy, like I always treat this special summon like an extra normal. Like you're never gonna get anything crazy out of this, because all your basically special summoning is kind of what all your shit already does. So like that's not a crazy good effect, but it is a nice to have an extra normal. Most importantly, when this card is link summoned, if it is 4 materials, which it always will, you draw 4 and put 3 back. So it's a +1, and also you can, if you have some bricks or have some shit you don't want, you can put it back. Apo, if you get negates, it gets 800 attack per thing you made it with, and then it gets negates equal to 800. It gets as many negates as things you made it with. Generally, this deck is making it with 4, but sometimes if we do a beat cop line, we have to make it with 3. Beat cop I explained. Muckraker discards a card to reborn to Fiend, and then it Fiend locks you. And also, if a monster would be destroyed, you can instead tribute a Fiend monster, which is quite good. Nightmare Unicorn, when this is link summoned, you can discard a card to spin, and then you can discard a card for cost, and target a card on the field to spin it. And obviously, I've never had this co-linked. And I also added a little side deck. These cards are fun. If you want to replace the little BA brow thing here, use these 4 cards. Ogopogo is here if you prefer it with Thunderbird. Hope Harb and Infection Buzz King if you want to replace Nightmare Unicorn, do it with these 2. And that is all. Anyway, that is this abomination. I appreciate your attention. Thank you for sticking around. And yeah, have a nice day.